Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm just going to offer you my final thoughts really on Spearpoint 1943, and although I'm holding the Eastern Front box up, I will also be addressing my thoughts on the original, the first volume, which of course addresses the US forces battling the Germans in the Italian theatre. So overall, from the plays I've had of this game, and I have been playing this game for about 2 or 3 years now, it is a very pleasing game. It's not quite at the level of a full war game. The maneuver element, for one, is highly abstracted. So there's hardly anything, unless you factor in some special scenario rules that cover the initial advance to contact. You begin the game with your forces already engaged, in a manner that feels almost, muzzle to muzzle. You've been plonked on your battlefield, there it is. And thereafter, it becomes an exercise in managing the resources that you have, using them to their maximum potential, and trying to inflict more damage on the enemy, of course, than he or she can inflict on you in the same time. In a standard game, you're both, of course, looking at the dead pile as it creeps up. You usually have a standard threshold of, say, 70 to 90 points, and the first person to reach that level, the instant one player reaches that level, then the game is over and somebody has won. The scenarios do a really good job of nuancing that slightly, because while at some point all of us just want a stand-up fight, and the game models that very well, but the scenarios allow you to be a bit more subtle about it. So in the one I was playing in the last video, the Germans had what seemed like the temptingly easy task of simply breaking through both Soviet front lines, and then it didn't matter. They were through to the green fields beyond. In fact, funnily enough, that sounds almost like a summary of the operational briefing for Operation Citadel. Unfortunately, the Russians, i.e. me, had other ideas, and I found over the course of this game that although I lost far more units than the Germans did, they were all units that I could afford to lose, and my strategy of stocking the Russian reserve decks with cheap units who were, to put it bluntly, expendable. They were, there's no nice way to say this. They were bullet bags, basically. They were there to just blunt the German assault. This they did until I was able to assemble in my hand from the reserves deck a core of very heavy Soviet tanks with veteran crews. And when I committed those, that stopped the German advance. I would like to say that I was able to crush their armour and launch a full counterattack that regained all the ground. It didn't turn out that way, but by the time I got that force into action, the German side had pretty much run out of steam, and all that was needed was the appearance of these tanks to bring their advance to a grinding halt. And really, that's all I needed to accomplish. The slogging match that ensued ultimately saw me reach 75 victory points, and Russia had the day. Now, at the moment, it's not very easy to find human players, I'm afraid. COVID precautions, and it's Christmas. So I was playing the game as honestly as I could from both sides, trying to make the decisions for both sides as fairly as I could. You can do that to a degree. This game does solitaire reasonably well, because most of the time the decisions are obvious. But of course, in a two-player game, you get that marvelous tension, because I've no doubt a German player, as they were initially massacring their way through my forces, would have thought, the Russians are going. I can feel them breaking, only to find at the 11th hour I slam the gate shut in their face when I drop my horde of T-34-85s in front of them, and the odd KV-1, just to really ruin their day. So the game does that very well. There's this excitement. You can often see your opponent's hand of reserves getting fatter and fatter And you're never sure whether it's a load of useless cards that they can't deploy or whether they've got some really nasty surprise waiting for you. There's a lot of tension there. Some things are a little bit gamey, of course. In the beginning of the combat phase, where both sides give targeting instructions to their units, you can see who's aiming at you. It allows you to prejudge the optimum firing order for your units. So a sensible thing to do is if you've got a reasonable unit that you suspect or that you know is going to get blasted that turn, but you happen to have the initiative, by all means let them take their shot first, because chances are that, well, there will be no second chance. So give them that opportunity. Now, that's not something that real life commanders would have necessarily had many opportunities to think. Yes, you would know when someone was firing at you, but few commanders on a battlefield have the luxury of going, right, I'm going to tell them to go first because they're probably going to die. I'll hold them back. I mean, there are similar situations, but I think the military mental process doesn't quite work that way. I mean, wargaming is always an abstraction, but this slightly suffers from the lack of a hidden targeting protocol. I mean, you could play it that you simply decide on a unit's targeting, if you want to house rule it that way, as their turn comes up. But then that takes away the frustration, which I find is a beautiful mechanic of thinking, that's a powerful unit. I want to make sure it's dead, so I'm going to order 4 of my units to pile on it. We saw this happen in the game demo in the previous video, where loads of units concentrated their fire on that poor group of Russian submachine gunners, and in the end it was the infantry squad who wiped them out before the tanks even got there, so the panzers wasted their turn on turn 1. I do like other mechanisms, like the friendly fire one. They keep things tense. So the poor Ruskies on turn 1 again, imagining that they were going to receive an enormous boost by way of a heavy artillery barrage, when the Germans, blinded by their defensive smokescreen, couldn't even see to target any of the Russian frontline units. I thought I was being so clever, and then the shells fell short and wiped out my T-34s in the forward line. Oh. And I think that really is, that kind of thing is the great attraction of this game. It gives you that frustration, it gives you that tension. You feel you're in a maelstrom of combat, as much as one can with a set of cards on a table. It's very evocative that way. I like the way it sort of conjures up that feel. And at the end of the day, it's a card-based war game. There are physical and logistical limitations to what you can achieve. If people want something more detailed, they probably should get out something that includes a map. Now, having said that, there is a further expansion for these games that introduces a map to regulate movement of the cards. You can actually place the cards on the map. And it also tightens up the rules for terrain. So you actually gain that maneuver element, which you did not have in the initial iteration of these games. I have not played with the map. I have heard mixed reviews about the map expansion, because it is fairly pricey, as I understand it. Now, nothing negative has been said about it. The worst I've heard about the terrain map expansion is from people who enjoy this game very much and who say that for them it doesn't add a huge deal to the experience, not for the price point. At the other end of the spectrum, there are folks who absolutely rave about it and say that it really takes the game to the next level. Without altering any of the key components, it almost turns it into an entirely different game, which I find quite intriguing. If I get the opportunity, I will play with the map set one day and see what they're talking about there. But I've got to say, in terms of the experience this game delivers, it is a winner. These are not expensive at all. They're a bit hard to find, but you can still find them in the UK in certain wargaming stores. Um, I would also suggest that if you don't mind the wait, it's worth going onto the website of Colin's Epic War Games directly. I will put links to their website in the description of all three of these videos. Well worth a visit. I've dealt with them before. I ordered the East Front Heavy Weapons expansion directly from them because it wasn't available in the UK at the time, and very friendly, helpful and quick service. They were really good. So I would recommend playing the basic game, see how you find it. If you want something a bit different, maybe get together with a mate and try and buy the map set jointly just to make that experience a bit less financially painful. But to be perfectly honest, I can't imagine that you would suffer too much if you just stuck with the card game as it is. It is so transportable. So much fits into these boxes. I sometimes take these with me on my commute, and I am able to transport both the East Front and the West Front boxes, so I can cater to what mood I'm feeling in. The cards, as you've seen, are absolutely gorgeous. They're quite reasonable. They're not too thick, not too thin either. They're average, but the way that the information is presented, the photographs, the ease of cross-referencing once you get used to how the game system works, there is so much going for this game. Um, do try it. I don't think you'll regret it. So I'm going to sign off there. I expect I will be playing this game a few more times before I move on to doing a review of another one because it's been a while. I quite miss it, and it was really good to play again. I'd shelved this game because a few other card games had come out that I wanted to try, but now that it's right in front of me, um, I want to dive back in. The battle that I played out for the previous video was awesome. It reminded me of everything I loved about this game. I think it will appeal to new wargamers who are graduating from the very basics and wanting something a little meatier, but possibly not wanting to play something like Squad Leader or any of the really meaty tactical war games just yet. They want a stepping stone in between. It's a fantastic filler in between heavy war games. As someone who war games quite a lot, I find a lot to be pleased with about it. You can play the game in an evening easily. You can play a couple of games in an evening. And it just generally is a very well thought out game. It works. Nothing really weird happens in it. And I particularly like the uncertainty of the damage deck. So what this does is it takes away the damage point counting exercise. Yes, you take a guess, an educated guess at how much firepower you need to mass to wreck something. But if you don't overkill it, there's always the possibility that a lucky shot will deal it crippling damage. And I like that uncertainty. I like the idea that, a rather cruddy anti-tank rifle in the right circumstances might just knock a critical piece of track off a Panzer IV. It's those moments which you wait for in every game. So if you like your Second World War games, if you like things that are fairly fast-paced, and if you like something that gives you just enough flavour for both sides to feel very different, and that applies to the US versus the Germans as well. They do feel and play very differently to their German opposite numbers in the first volume of this game. Definitely give this a try. I do recommend it. And I shall leave you with that. Thank you very much for tuning in.